Here it comes. As we take our seats, representing various ages and ethnicities and cultural heritages and religious backgrounds, abilities, socioeconomic groups, and sexual orientation and gender identity, we come together for Tuesday tea time to study and practice for the benefit of all beings and for this living earth. Aspiring to do no harm and to dismantle barriers that cause separation and suffering. We can do that by looking internally at what comes up for us when we notice we might be causing harm to ourselves or others. And we begin to realize that our liberation is interconnected with the liberation of all. And acknowledging those indigenous peoples whose ancestral lands we are sitting on here in Portland. The Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Siletz, Clackamas, Multnomah, the Willamette, Tumwater, many, many Native communities that inhabited the Columbia River Gorge and the confluence of the Willamette and the Columbia River, this rich land here in southeast Portland where I am. And we take this time to acknowledge all of those who went before us, bringing the Buddhist lineage to us from so many different countries. And how we've settled here in this spot, our noble chair, this noble seat, where we begin to really inhabit our body and mind together in one place, bringing mindfulness to the fore. What does that mean, really? Being in the present moment with exactly what's happening. If we notice that thinking is happening, we notice that thinking is happening. If we notice there's physical sensations in the body, we can be present for that, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. We have the sense doors. Hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, smelling, and the thought door. And we can access some attempt at calming the body and relaxing the mind, and vice versa, relaxing the body and calming the mind. Oftentimes, if we Start with just the simplest thing, not complicating it too much. Whatever that is for you, it may be attending to the breath at the nostrils or the belly. Sometimes it's the use of mantras, repeated phrases. It could be the touch point of buttocks on the chair or the arms or hands against our bodies. We're here, present, acknowledging the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, the ability to seek enlightenment, the teachings that the Buddha passed down and that got translated in various ways for all of the countries that it went through to reach us, however the teachings came to us. We stand in appreciation, paying homage. Also to each other in this Sangha and all of the other Sanghas of lay people, practitioners, monastics. Those that traveled with the Dhamma from country to country. We have this stable container of understanding the Buddha's practices through understanding anicca, anatta, and dukkha. Understanding through direct experience, right this moment, of seeing whatever is arising, noticing its nature to change. You don't just think about it changing. We actually experience that change. And one avenue where we can sort of understand the idea of anatta, of not self, is realizing that if we try to hang on to something that's arising that seems pleasant, that it will change and we can't hang on to it. It's a thought arising and passing. There's no solid sense of self to grasp. And knowing this by just seeing it directly from time to time just helps pave the road of understanding that the suffering that we often notice in ourselves happens because of grasping, happens because we want to define something around our sense of self and claim it, keep it, or push it away because we don't like it. And we hold ourselves in kindness, in compassion, as we know that we are living in a lot of circumstances of pain and distress. There's a quote from Robin Wall Kimmerer, the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge. And they say, even a wounded world is feeding us. Even a wounded world holds us, giving us moments of wonder and joy. I choose joy over despair, not because I have my head in the sand, but because joy is what the earth gives me daily, and I must return the gift. So may we hold ourselves in kindness, compassion, noticing moments of joy that arise when we are able to see clearly. One of these three characteristics of anicca, anatta, dukkha, these characteristics of unpleasant nature of something that's happening to us in our bodies, in our minds. Or the craving that occurs, wanting pleasant sensations to continue. Or the aversion that occurs, pushing away what we have a hard time holding. We can quickly see that grasping and pushing away, greed and aversion, create tension in the mind. And as soon as we notice the letting go process, the release of grasping, that is a moment of freedom. We're aware of it. And so we sit with enough interest and enough energy to be curious about what's arising, to stay with what's arising until perhaps we can see it change or end or disappear. And then we see the next object come into our minds, into our hearts and minds. Over and over and over, noticing change, noticing impermanence. This is a key to that freedom from suffering. Opening to and being present with what is changing. And that as we hold ourselves in kindness in the practice without pushing ourselves to accomplish something, but just be with what's happening, and yet having enough energy to stay present to what's being shown to us. We develop concentration by attending to the breath or to those changing objects at the sense doors. We build confidence in the practice as we see that mindfulness is present, stays with something. Awareness is there, and when mindfulness of the object is gone, awareness goes, and it arises again with the next object. So we're developing mindfulness, confidence, concentration. Mindfulness is there to be present, to return us to the present moment. without judgment or condemnation about what's happening or what we should be doing. We just return again. And wisdom is developed. To see clearly whether what's happening is skillful or unskillful. Is it useful for our thoughts to go in that direction? Or can we incline them towards something more skillful? It's a repeated process that continues to pave the way of these good deeds for ourselves, this time that we take out to be present with whatever's happening. And so we want to just pay attention. Just pay attention and watch. Be aware of what's coming and going in the landscape of this heart and mind. And if we continue to watch and see when suffering arises and when it passes, and we see our grasping, and our releasing of that grasping, that gives us a glimpse into genuine happiness, genuine freedom. One breath at a time, one sensation arising and passing. quietly looking within is not easy. We have busy minds a lot of the time. And so even that is just noticed. Oh, thinking is happening. There's busyness in the mind. Thinking is occurring in the mind. Sometimes we may notice that the mind is filled with grasping, filled with greed and clinging. Other times we may notice that there is a mind filled with aversion, pushing things away. But we don't have to identify with that mind as me, mine. The mind is doing what it does. It's thinking. Hearing is doing what it does. Sounds come to the ear door. The same with the other senses. And so we have mindfulness and awareness present with all of the changing objects that come before us. And if it gets too hard to pay attention to one thing at a time while they're moving, we can go back to the solidity, to the single pointedness of the breath, where we feel it the most. We can return to the nostrils. We can turn to the belly, or we can turn to the touch point. And then we can open up the field of awareness a little later on after we've developed a little more single-pointed attention. Just like sometimes we use Vipassana regularly to really notice and see clearly what's happening, one object at a time. And other times we can back away and hold ourselves in kindness, hold ourselves in compassion. So there's wisdom energy and compassion energy balancing each other out. The two wings of the Dharma. We may find ourselves tired. We can just wake up in this moment, renewing a commitment to be present with what's arising. We may find ourselves grasping in a certain way, having desire for things to be a certain way or stay the pleasant way that they are. Or maybe if unpleasant sensations or mindsets arise, we can notice how we push them away. These hindrances, there might be doubt in the practice, why you're doing it. There can be anxiety. There can be agitation in the mind. We just notice all of this as impermanent states, non-personal states. They're arising due to conditions. They stay for a certain amount of time. They leave on their own accord. And we have mindfulness and awareness to be present with this ever-changing array of sensations that come and go through our hearts and minds and bodies. And we can just be here. It's like the analogy of if you were to go to Africa to photograph the wildlife. You could go all over the plains looking for the different animals, or you could just sit by the watering hole where all the animals eventually come. And so practice becomes really simple if we pay attention carefully and non-reactively to our suffering. To the contractions, to the restrictions and the stresses in our bodies and our minds and our hearts. And it's for the sake of liberation and freedom. What we do and don't need to know comes to us if we just watch our suffering and its end. We watch our grasping. And we can experience moments of genuine happiness that comes from the releasing of that grasping. those three characteristics: anicca, dukkha, anatta. The Buddha's teachings point us away from looking for the self or trying to understand or improve the self. Instead, it suggests that we pay attention to the fear, to the desire, to the ambition, to clinging that motivates the building of self-identity. Sometimes people are drawn to meditation because they feel that they're defective in some way and that their meditation practice will help make a better or find a better self. But instead, can we find the particular suffering that is connected with wanting to improve the self? Freedom or liberation entails releasing our suffering, not avoiding it, but seeking relief from it or compensating for it. It doesn't necessarily mean that we dwell on our suffering either, or that suffering is never going to cease. We do know that the Third Noble Truth reminds us that there is a cessation to suffering. But we can take this opportunity over and over again to let go of that grasping of desire and ambition and clinging that builds self-identity. We can just be with what arises. Hold ourselves gently and kindly. Be fully present. And so we hold ourselves in this place of constant paradoxes. This place of being with constant change. Holding ourselves in kindness. Holding ourselves with compassion through whatever arises. Not turning away from something, just being present for it. Like the analogy of waiting at the pond for the animals to come to the watering hole. As Rumi calls it in his poem on the guest house. These guests, we invite them in to tea. We never know who's going to come in the door. Every day a different frame of mind, he refers to. So we hold all of this with openness, with kindness, with compassion, with softness, noticing what's coming into the heart and mind. Oh, is it a mind filled with ill will? Oh, is it a mind filled with happiness? Oh, is it a mind filled with greed? Just present with mindfulness, compassion, kindness, and equanimity. To be with things as they are without falling into extremes. And so as we hold this space for ourselves and include others in it, humankind, animal kingdoms, the plant world, worlds we can only see through microscopes, worlds that can only be seen through telescopes. May all of these beings, seen and unseen, known and unknown, be held in kindness and compassion. Be at ease. May all beings everywhere know happiness and the causes of happiness. Be free from suffering. See clearly the causes of suffering. This grasping and clinging. Seeing it all with mindfulness. Held in the arms of the unconditioned, held in the arms of unconditional kindness. Held in the arms of the immeasurable realms of kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And may the goodness of our practice benefit all beings. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya domino upakitawa maruchanti te samvapasamo sukho. All conditioned things are subject to impermanence. They arise and pass away. And seeing this clearly with mindfulness brings the greatest happiness, which is peace. Thank you for your practice. It brings me joy, and I hope it brings you joy too.